You're going to keep it in the fridge?
Hello everyone, this is Asma and I'm talking about village life today. Village life versus city life. I grew up in India and I was in the village for the first 4 years of my life before I went to the city for schooling. And every holiday in those days, we used to go to the village. And after I grew up, we started going to Bombay and other places. And in those days, village life was just play, play, play. It was just play for me. I didn't have any work to do. There were lots of people around working, and my job was to just be a good child and play. So I remember very happy memories living next door to my grandparents' house. So my mother's parents lived next door to my father's parents, and I was in between both houses. Grew up as a single child until my sister was born when I was almost 5 years old. So I was a very happy, spoiled, little bit spoiled child at that time, and we had so much space to run around. There were big rooms, big corridors, big grounds to play. In my grandfather's house, there would be a big front door, gate of the house, and then there was a big front yard, or a side yard, you would say, because the animals used to be in that yard. And the big barrels, called koti, there was called koti. Big barrels of grains were in the storerooms in that part of the house. Then there was this ground where we could play. Then the structure of the house where there was 4 rooms downstairs and 4 rooms upstairs, and there was a kitchen and the front yard. And then there was another ground, and the second part of the house similar, 4 rooms upstairs, 4 rooms downstairs, a kitchen and a front yard. And then another big ground, and then there was another part of the house, and then an office, my granddad's office, where that was on the main road. So the people used to come and visit him just in his office, and the family could move around in this big area which starts from one end of the road and ends at the other. Your one part of the house would have a different street, and the end of the house would be a completely different part, different street. So it was that spread out. Next to it was my father's home. So my parents were neighbors when they got married, and I had the luxury of being able to go from one house to another. And luckily, we also had a passage through my father's house. We go through another few rooms, and we could end up in my mother's father's house. So there was an internal passage, and I used to take my mother 10 times a day from this house to that house. She would go with my plate of food. I'd have 2 morsels or 2 spoons in one house. Then we'll walk around, go to my grandma's house, my mother's house, my nanny's house, and then have 2 morsels there, and then come back. And so spoiled at that time. And I didn't realize the value of village life as I grew up in my high school and college days, because back then when we used to go hunting with my cousins and all, it was fun. We used to go with a group of people, doing clay pigeon or even real shooting, hunting. In those days, there were very few restrictions, and we used to have a group of people go with us. And that was village life, so free. There was no restriction of any space. We could go to the mosque, and there was our madrasa there. So I also used to go to the madrasa there. And then there was a pond, there was a lake, and the children were just jumping from mosque the back of the mosque steps right into the pond and swimming. I wasn't a good swimmer, but I used to just stay in the knee to back waters. And it was a very free life. There were no restrictions, and we used to have food come home. We used to have things come from the farm. I particularly liked the green chana, the popta, and they used to make different mithais in the village. I heard my grandfather had rented out one of his shops to a halwai, and this halwai used to make fresh things every day. We never had anything that was next day, because it would all get sold off in the same day. He would make a few kilos of everything, and the one item I really enjoyed was arway. Arwai was leaf, and they used to put some chickpea flour and roll it, steam it, and then chop it into little rounds and then fry them. But the way they did it with green mango and all the oh, it brings water to my mouth. Well, they used to make it so well. We can never get that taste exactly 100% when we try to make it at home. And so it was delicious. And when you feel bored with home food, you just go and get something from that shop. They make sweets and savories, and that was all freshly made. So when I came to the city, and in the city, you have sweets made few days back, and the bigger the city, the older the sweets. So when I went to Bombay, you'd find stale sweets, and I'd never seen that in my village. You never have anything stale. Fridge was not a concept as I was growing up. Everything was made fresh. Everything was freshly bought in the morning. You know, some people from the house would go shopping and they'd come back with fresh produce, and that would be cooked, and you eat the lunch for lunchtime. Even lunch wasn't served for dinner. Anything left over was given to the workers, and then fresh dinner made after 4 o'clock in the evening. And dinner time used to be around 7 o'clock. We are all finished by 8 o'clock, and then we sleep on bed outdoors if it's not raining and it's not too cold. I used to sleep next to my grandma in our front yard, and it was enclosed. It was all enclosed, so we could just put the cart lights called special village bed that we just put outside, and we put mattresses and pillows, and we just sleep under the stars. And I had a radio at that time, so I used to listen to the radio. We didn't have television over there. The electricity had came to the village when my father was young, but we had electricity, but we didn't have water supply. We didn't have full water supply. So there were men who used to come bringing barrels of water every day, and they would fill up every bathroom and the kitchen. That there used to be big barrels, and the men used to come and fill the water on a daily basis. And then as I was growing up, we got taps, and the water used to come for limited time in the taps. So we had to use a hose pipe to fill all these different barrels throughout the house, and make sure that we had our showers around 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and then there was extra water for cooking and using. And then when we went to the city and came back in the village, the water was a problem, but it wasn't a problem. We always had enough water for use and all. It's just that in the cities, you have water 24 hours. Excuse me. I have a bit of cough. Okay, so those little things were making a big difference in people's lives. They were choosing to use a gas cooker as compared to a lot of clay oven and just sticks. My cousins and aunties used to use a handmade clay stove, and they used to use sticks. So there used to be a big pile of sticks brought from the farms used for fuel. They also used cow dung, dry cow dung, for fuel. So they used to have rounds, and when the cows lay the dung every day, they are rolled into little rounds, and they are dried in the sun. They put on the walls, some mud walls, and then once it's dry, they are kept in next to the wood fire, and they are used as fuel. Now, my cousin used to make a khichdi at night in her handi, which is a clay pot, and on the wood fire, and we used to make it in a pressure cooker in next door in my father's house. And my mother's house was next door to my father's house, the parents' house. And so I used to go from one to the other. And I used to exchange that, because the one she made on wood fire was so much more tastier than the one we made on a pressure cooker and on a gas or a kerosene stove. We used to have kerosene stoves and gas. So there were different types of cooking equipments. In the cities, we only had the gas mainly and a spare kerosene stove in the house. So looking back now and looking at some videos now, YouTube videos, I feel that I've missed out on the village life. There's a lot you can enjoy if you really become a part of it, because there are so many old recipes they have maintained. They haven't changed. They haven't added the city touch to it. It's still very authentic, and the way they make their spices, still they taste so much better. They are ground on a stone grinder. I still see my aunties and the ladies who were cooking in those days. They used to make the spice for the morning, first thing before they start cooking, and they would grind everything on that stone grinder and then start the wood fire in a clay oven and then do their cooking. I don't think it took very long. They were cooking only for 2 or 3 hours. So once the fire was on, it was full on, and then you could reduce the flame by just taking some sticks out. So you couldn't control the temperature as good as a stove, a gas stove, but they had learned how many sticks to use for which dish. And of course it was smoky, so back in those days I used to find that, oh, this smoke is not good for your health, and you could get any lung disease or problem with the smoke. But then if you are cooking in open air, it doesn't matter. So a little bit of smoke, it just comes, and then it goes from another vent in the, there's a vent in the stove from where the smoke goes away, so it goes away. You're sitting in that environment, but you don't necessarily have to face the smoke. So this is something I appreciate now. I appreciate the basics of life. In the lockdown, I'm sitting and watching videos about people who still live that life in India and Pakistan and surrounding countries. They have homesteads where they have their chickens and the cows, buffaloes, goats, and they have like a barrel full of milk come out of it, and then they boil that milk a few times to pasteurize it, and then they get fresh cream out of it, and then they can make butter, fresh butter with that. I remember when I used to go home to the village, my grandmother, my father's mother, used to order a big jar full of white butter. A lady used to come with white butter, because I've come back from the city, and I'm there tasting all this bajre ka roti, which is millet flour roti and sorghum flour rotis, and put pure white butter on it, and I really enjoyed that more than the cereal and milk or toast. And we used to make monmali roti, which was quite decorative, just made of wheat flour, but the way it was made was so Moorish. It was so delicious, and that I've learned the technique and I still make it. We call it bhakri in the city language, in the Gujarati language, but we used to call it monwali roti. Means you put a lot of fat, about 25-30% of ghee goes into the flour with a bit of salt and water, and you make a hard flour and then make a biscuit type of rotis, or a paratha type of roti, but it's not exactly a paratha. That is our staple village things, which are still so unique, and I appreciate those things as I grow older. In fact, I appreciated back then, even when I was younger, and I took the trouble to learn it, because those skills are now very handy even now. Village life, I've been watching videos on how they make gur. Gur is jaggery, and I'd prefer jaggery to refined sugar, white sugar anytime, because it's just cane sugar which they boil, and then they add a little bit of oil and some baking soda, and then just set it and make pieces, and they say it's delicious. And I buy gur here, which is jaggery, from an Indian shop, and anytime I want to use in sweet dishes, I use gur along with dates, and that's how I make my imli chutney. And that's how I like, if I have a sweet tooth and I want to make some traditional Indian sweets like shira and halwa, the way they make back in our village, I use gur for that. I use jaggery. There are so many things I can discuss about our village life. The way we used to just run around as children, but then as you grow older, you have restrictions, you have to follow protocols. And I'm glad in those days used to feel like, oh, this is such a huge restriction, you can't go out and you have to be chaperoned. But those rules were for our safety, and I understand and appreciate those rules more now. In certain villages, they still don't expose their girls. Their girls don't get photographed or go on videos. um, that is how they have maintained the culture. But in a way, it's for the safety of women, rather than suppressing them, because I think the women are still quite happy there. The fresh air, the fresh food, and if you're happy with that life, and only when you feel ill and when somebody's got a serious stroke or something, they have to be rushed to a hospital in the city, and for higher education you have to go to the cities. So I believe that when you need those facilities, then you have to go to the cities. But overall, village life is so healthy. My grandfather, grandmother, they never fell ill all the way till age 60. They 60, 70, they just had some medicines from the local doctor. They didn't need operations and all. So it's not a bad life. In fact, Bombay is a collection of so many small villages put together. So 50 years ago or 60 years ago, Bombay was still smaller villages just coming together, and now it's grown into a big complex city with all the trains and facilities and the crowding and the housing issues. I would rather stay in a village if I can get my basics sorted out. Now, earnings wise, I've been watching videos about how much they earn in the villages as compared to how much people earn in the cities. And there's also a saying that you are going to earn exactly what you are destined to earn, whether you work as a doctor or whether you work as a farmer or you have a job as a software engineer or whatever profession. You are going to eat and drink and live and enjoy things as you are destined to enjoy, and you will earn. So if that is your criteria for choosing between a city life and a village life, I think a village life is better, because you enjoy so much open space, fresh air, and fresh food, and you can grow anything you want. It's all depending on what type of soil you are, but you can also now purchase and change the soil. You can grow so many things and you can earn money doing so many different things. Like the other day, I was watching a video making jaggery making video, and I saw that 2 or 3 men were working, and they produced about 100 kilo jaggery in one day, just using very basic equipment and just a wood fire. And that jaggery got sold there and then, and that was something like 120 rupees a kilo of jaggery sold in that one day. Now, that was 3 men's work on that one day, creating it from the sugar cane, and whatever effort went into sowing the seeds and sugar cane growing, and they sold 100 kilograms of jaggery on the day, cash money. So that's the daily wage split between 3 people. Of course, the labor had gone. You have to calculate the labor that went into cultivating the land and planting it and looking after it and watering it and all that. But if you compare the wages, it would come to the same. Plus, it's all cash money. They have to declare some money, but a lot of this is like trade off. So you can trade one thing for another, and people live in homesteads. So 20-30,000 rupees or pounds or worth of things you can just trade and have your basics sorted. So I think that there is still a lot of potential if people go and develop the villages in India. Gandhiji said, Mahatma Gandhi in India, he said that build your cottage industries, and cottage industries are best to be developed in the village side. You can develop cottage industries in cities as well, but villages need more attention. People who understand this difference, who understand that being in the city and being in the village is not going to compromise you. If you use the right techniques and you use the right tools and develop the products and processes in the villages, you can make a really good earning as well. um, from coronavirus point of view, it's important to have this social distancing and keep your livelihood going. And there are so many cottage industries that can be developed in the villages. I'll make more videos on individual topics. Thank you for your help and support. Please subscribe to my channel if you like village life, simple life, and basics on how we can turn our life around to have more fulfilling and happy, healthy lives. Take care. Bye.